Hey Rocky fans, Leandra here. Kelly and I wanted to put a content warning on this episode because this minute of the film depicts scenes that, to a modern eye, contain sexual assault. While these scenes were originally not written with that intent, we are aware that for some listeners, this discussion may need to be skipped. If you would like to pick up the conversation after we're done with these minutes, check back in at minute 56. Rocky Horror Minute is rated R. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is also rated R. We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the road we will talk about some adult content and use some of our favorite swear words.
Feko, Picho, Fiki, Pugfrapi, Saksumi.
Consider yourselves warned.
Welcome to Rocky Horror Minute, the podcast where we break down the Rocky Horror Picture Show in excruciating detail, 1 minute at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Leandra.
And today we're discussing minute 55 of the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Woohoo!
Yeah, exactly. Woohoo! Can't drive 55, etc. What happens in minute 55?
Well, we begin with riffraff on the monitor, and he continues his previous statement of, the new Playmate is loose and somewhere on the castle grounds. Magenta has just released the dogs. Frank and Brad, who are still in the midst of Brad having his first non-self-engineered orgasm, pause so that Frank can say, huh? Coming. And then he goes back down to Brad's crotch, which makes Brad convulse in joy. We then wipe to Janet, who's sitting up in her bedroom, on her bed, and has a very thick, fake tear rolling down her left cheek. She says, what's happening here? Where's Brad? Where's anybody? We then cut to a shot of a pack of German shepherds running around the castle grounds, chasing a bewildered Rocky. One dog is a few paces behind the pack, and one of its ears is flipped down, as happens with dogs from time to time. If you listen closely, you can hear Rocky screaming in fear and possibly pain. We return to see that Janet is now doing her own meandering through the castle. She says, "Oh, Brad," while dramatically flopping over to the elevator. She goes inside the elevator to say, "Brad, my darling, how could I have ever done this to you?" And as she weeps, she looks down and presses a button so the elevator returns back up to the lab. After a bumpy landing of the elevator, she exits and exclaims, "Oh, if only we hadn't made this journey," with her right hand exasperatedly on her head. She flails toward the transducer board to declare if only the car hadn't broken down, while bringing her left hand coyly to her face. Flouncing again toward the tank, not covered in the red cloth, but still hard to see inside, she turns and then, with her back against the tank, flipping her left hand with reckless abandon kind of up toward her head, she declares, "If only we were amongst And that's how this minute ends.
What a minute.
What a minute indeed. So what are your thoughts?
I think it's really a pretty fun little minute. I like Janet's melodrama moment and the way that, especially at the beginning of the scene, when it's like, they do some like really abrupt, rapid cuts with her face, you know, what's happening here? And then it's like a different shot, like, where's Brad? Where's anybody? Like, that really makes the whole thing seem even more dramatic. It's so silly.
Now, I have a note about that. This really is a scene of ridiculous editing choices. I think they're choices.
Yeah.
There's so many splices, so many cuts. Do you think it was a choice, or could this have been a necessity because there weren't any great takes?
That particular thing feels intentional. Now, I do have a lot to say about the timeline of this and also the just general... I do not think they did a good job cutting this because they make it seem like, because of the way that they cut back to Rocky running, they make it seem like he's still running and then Janet is there, basically, and spoiler alert, we're going to find out he's in the tank, so he can't
What?
still be being chased by the dogs. I know. He can't still be being chased by the dogs, and you also, I think, I'm almost certain you can hear the dogs when Janet is like getting in the elevator.
You definitely hear her all through the what's happening here, where's Brad, where's anybody? So dogs are just barking
Well,
through
that's
all
what
of
I
that.
mean by yeah, that's what I mean by getting in the elevator. Like you hear the dogs, so like that implies that Rocky's still being chased by the dogs, but that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Although I'm saying that that definitely happens when Janet's still in the bedroom. I don't remember it being on the next set of lines when Janet is flouncing around toward the elevator. So,
No, yeah, I'm saying when I was watching this minute at that
yeah.
part, I think you can hear dogs in the background.
Yeah. This minute happens for Janet not only in her bedroom but also like right after that first series of cuts, she goes to the elevator. And by the time she's at the elevator,
I don't interpret her as being in her bedroom at any point in this minute.
if you look at the background when you just see her face and it's the what's happening here? Where's Brad? Where's anybody? You see the canopies that are clearly
Oh.
within the bedroom. So she is sitting up on her bed and lamenting her actions.
Okay. That makes a little more sense because I honestly thought that all of that happened at the same time pretty much, but if it's supposed to be her going to different parts of the castle and wailing about where is everybody, then that makes a little more sense.
It does. They're kind of taking the timeline and going, who's gonna be paying attention to this? Certainly not the people watching.
That's true. And we've already been admonished by one Larry Wiesel for even trying to establish a timeline when Columbia has already told us that time means nothing in this movie. But I'm still going to do it.
Yeah. It is our responsibility as Rocky Horror historians to question the
We're going to
facts.
do it anyhow, anyhow. But we are.
We are, actually.
In general, though, let's talk about this whole sequence of events. So I'm guessing at least 30 minutes has passed between, but it has to be more than that. Janet is done having sex. Frank goes to have sex with Brad. We see that scene, and then Magenta releases the dogs. So that could have all been, depending on how quickly Frank got over to Brad's room and everything, that could have all been like 10 minutes or something like that. But then the dogs chase Rocky around the grounds and I guess herd him back inside, which means Rocky sucks at running, which is easy to believe. Like, running away is not something I would expect him to be really good at. But they herd him back inside and all the way to the tank? So are we to believe these dogs, like, ran through the castle and up in the elevator up to the, you know?
Here's what I think the timeline is.
Okay.
This is all just completely up for debate. But Janet gets boned by Frank.
Yes.
At the same
Yes.
time that Riff and Magenta are messing around with Rocky, that is roughly when Frank is having sex with Janet. Then
Yes.
Rocky has escaped, and Magenta and Riff are like, shit, what do we do now? We're going to have to release the dogs. And while that happens, Frank has already moved on to bedroom number 2 and is having sex with Brad. And at the same time that Riff is expressing that the dogs have been released, is the same time that Janet is going, I have regrets. Regrets are what I have about this situation. And I think that it is unlikely that the dogs are indoor outdoor dogs. I think that they're more outdoor sorts of guard dogs that were released from like their kennel. And Rocky, who is still wearing a fucking chain around his ankle, so he's running like he has a skippet on, is running around trying to figure out how to get away from these dogs, sees an open door runs through that open door and finally makes his way back to where he last felt safe, which was the tank.
That kind of makes sense.
I think
But
it
so,
makes
all
more
right.
sense
So
than
Rhythm.
the dogs chasing Rocky up through the elevator.
I want to make it clear I never thought that made sense. I thought nobody thought about this.
Well, I thought about it.
That's fair. I think nobody involved in the movie thought
Oh,
about this,
that
but
might be
like,
true. I've never done cocaine, so I couldn't confirm.
yeah, like Riff and Magenta, which this is totally in character. I love that they just like released the dogs and had no follow up. They're like, well, the dogs will probably find him. I don't care if he makes it, because they don't seem to have intercepted him at any point upon returning to the castle. And theoretically, they know he's there. Magenta is at least watching him on the monitor in upcoming minutes. So I love that they were just like, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that Rocky can operate the elevator even is astonishing to me. Maybe he climbed back up.
I think that that's just as likely as anything. Of the entities that I think that we have experienced in this minute, I think that the dogs are highly unlikely to know how to figure out the buttons, followed
That's not
by.
what I was ever claiming, just to be
I
clear.
think that you were claiming that actually.
No.
You were like, these
I
dogs
mean, there
must be
does
really
just
smart. They're
appear
just bopping the buttons with their nose.
there does just appear to be one button that you smash with your palm, as I've seen many people do in this movie, so I could believe that Rocky could figure that out, but
Yeah.
honestly,
Just
they
not
don't
dogs,
portray him
Kelly.
as. No. I mean, honestly, there are dogs that could also do that, and German Shepherds are pretty smart.
Yeah. Would you
Uh,
say that these are the same sorts of dogs that you could teach human language and use all of those buttons to go outside, love, happy,
you
food,
know,
love, happy,
you, you
outside?
know, you know damn well that I believe those buttons to be a scam, and anyone who believes that Bunny the dog can talk in any meaningful way is a
What
fool.
about the hermit crab that knows sign language?
Okay, it's not a hermit crab, but it also cannot talk. I find it very interesting that the only sign this crab is able to make is the one that crabs constantly do on their own at all times, which is lifting their claw to their mouth. And it's like, oh, what a coincidence. That's the sign for food, which crabs always want. So if he puts his claw to it, well, if she puts her claw to her mouth and then I give her food, she eats it. This crab speaks human language. I love that crab. She's very cute. Her owner is stupid. And I'm willing to start a feud right now with Howie the crab's owner and all of their fans.
I am so happy that we have found your new jagoff disease.
Jack off disease. Dr. Scott would probably believe in Howie the crab. No, actually he wouldn't. He's a man of science, and
And lupus.
those those buttons have been disproven by science and people still believe them. It's so annoying. Like, how would you teach a dog the concept of like prepositions? Like I understand, like if they were just like, "Oh, I taught my dog to push this button when they want to go out and this button for food." That's fine, but tell me how you explained the concept of where and taught the dog to push it. It makes no fucking sense, but people love to anthropomorphize their animals. Here's some news for you, listeners. Coco the gorilla couldn't talk either. That was heavily disproven by science, and it was just cherry pick. It's the clever hands effect. Look it up. Coco the gorilla. Love her. Apes can learn certain signs for things, but the level of language attributed to Coco was simply a fantasy. I'm so sorry. Again, love her. I have studied more primate biology than you if you're typing me an angry email. But still send the angry email. I'm happy to get any kind of communication about this podcast.
Just make sure that you address that to exclusively Kelly because I don't like when people on the internet yell at me. I know that that is something that Kelly does genuinely enjoy. It's not my cup of tea though.
I don't genuinely enjoy getting yelled at on the internet. I genuinely enjoy getting emails in our Rocky Horror Minute inbox.
Oh, okay.
So, but anyway. I would like to talk about Susan Sarandon's little journey.
Yes, please.
What what is her goal? I guess she's looking for people, but she is weirdly comfortable in this castle at this point. Considering that she has not been alone in it ever. Like, you know when you sleep over at a friend's house and you wake up and they're still asleep and you just like awkwardly sit there?
Yes.
That is not Janet. She's like, I'm getting in the elevator. I'm going to flounce all over the lab. I'm going to throw myself against the tank. I'm going to go turn on. This hasn't happened yet, but she turns on the monitor. Like, all kinds of stuff that I'm like, wow, you really made yourself at home here quickly, considering the fact that you've been, like, ravished and, and like, everybody's like a creepy alien and stuff. You don't seem to care that much.
I also think that it's fun to keep in mind that, well, no, Janet's clothes have disappeared. She was given a robe. She could be wearing the robe. She's opted not to wear the robe.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I talked about in a previous minute of her gradually eroding modesty. She at first was like covering herself up, like not wanting anyone to see her in her underwear. Look at her now, she doesn't care.
It's you.
She's busting it open.
It's you.
Yeah, it's me.
It's
me, except I never had the modesty to begin with.
Yeah.
I do enjoy, though, on the topic of Janet, the like full body pan we get. Kind of a slow one. I don't know if it's supposed to be like male gazy, but it's an interesting shot. And we get confirmation that she's still wearing those nasty pantyhose, which must be so gross by now.
Yes. Yeah. Let's just not even talk about the fact that she's walked several miles and slept in these and fucked in these. Like any number of these activities would be like the end of pantyhose.
And now she is walking barefoot all around this castle, which is kept clean only by magenta. You know the soles of those are like jet black.
Yep. Disgusting.
I also wanted I wanted to comment on the dog moment we get. First of all, I love this. This happens in a lot of movies, and I always love it. Whenever you see like a mean dog that's supposed to be like chasing somebody or like attacking somebody, it's a dog actor which doesn't understand how to emote on stage, so their body language is completely happy and lovable. Like you can tell they're just the goodest boys, and that is definitely the case here. Leandra even pointed out one of them even has like a flipped inside out ear, and they are just running like, oh.
We're in the raid. So, raid is so good.
I wonder, I would love to know how Peter Hinwood felt about the dogs. Like if he liked working with them, if he's not a dog person and did not like having to film a scene being chased by a bunch of German shepherds,
I don't know. I would imagine though that he was at least a little bit intimidated by it.
Because, like, somebody like me, if I worked on this filming this would be the highlight. Like, for them to be like, Kelly, run over there and all the dogs will follow you. I'd be like, woohoo! And then, like, as soon as I was out of frame, I would be on the ground getting covered in, like, kisses from all of them, But, Peter Henwood doesn't strike me as a dog person.
Also, I know that all of his grunts and all of his singing was redubbed by Trevor White. The kind of screaming in fear or pain that I hear with these dogs is like much higher an octave than what Trevor White normally has. So I'm wondering if what we're hearing is Peter Hinwood. I'm not sure. I don't know that there's even a way to confirm that.
Yeah, I have a feeling anyone involved with the movie has fully forgotten by now. I would be inclined to think it is Peter Hinwood because I think if they had dubbed it in, they would have made it easier to hear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
It is not something that you notice unless you're really, really listening for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, of course, try to find out if he had any comments about the dogs. The answer is no. He hates this movie and talking about this movie, so I didn't try that hard, to be
He no
honest.
longer hates the movie.
Well, you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
He
We've discussed on the podcast. He would prefer to focus on other things in his life. So he has not given a lot of in-depth interviews about the minutia of Rocky Horror.
yeah. Yeah,
But
actually I recently was trying to track down if his antique store was still open. I know that he retired. He's not dead. He's not dead.
no, no, Paul is dead to him long ago.
Yeah. But not dead, just retired. I'm not able to confirm that even the antique store is even open now. It is assumed to be shut down. If somebody listening from the UK begs to differ, please let me know. But from all of the sources that I could find, it seems like when Peter Hinwood retired, the shop also just ceased to be.
That sounds likely. John or Niall, I know you're both in England.
Some part of it, yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it? I know Niall's Irish, but I think he lives in England. I don't remember. Oh, I also wanted to say the rain never looks great in this movie. It really does not look great in that scene.
No, not really.
It is a sprinkler or possibly even a hose on that setting.
It it always reminds me, like literally anytime I see rain in a movie, the fact that in the film Singing in the Rain, they couldn't see the raindrops terribly well, so they added milk to it. So it would
Oh
be
god.
easier to see just on film. So what you see is actually singing in the milk. I don't think that they did that in this film or in most films because that is not generally necessary. But just
Yeah.
something that lives in my brain anytime there's rain on on the screen. I go, oh, that that's probably not milk. Probably.
Probably not.
Probably not.
I liked in the very last scene we get with Barry and Frank, or Brad and Frank. Barry does some little silly feet in bed.
Yeah.
His 3-star feet, still in those gross socks, but you see them like he does like a weird like wrapping them around each other. It's fun how much effort he put into acting out that scene.
Yeah. And this is what I consider at least the last of our extremely fun but also admittedly problematic sex scenes in this movie. We won't need the content warning after this minute because the rest of the movie, while it does have sex scenes, it doesn't quite have the same issue with consent. I know that an argument can be made when, spoiler alert, you've got Janet and Rocky having sex, but I think that that one is a scene that makes people less squeamish than
I
these.
think I think we can call Janet and Rocky consensual. I have chosen to interpret Rocky as an adult. He's has half of an adult brain.
Yeah,
They portray him in a strange way, but I do not think anybody wanted to interpret him as like a childlike person having sex. So
true.
I'm not going to either.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts about the sex scene since this is kind of the last time that we experience them?
Nope. Still one of my favorite things to do. I have recently hit upon some gags that I like more when I'm acting out the sex scenes, so I no longer have the fear of them that I normally do. It's still a crowd pleaser for the audience. I I genuinely think it's very fun. They were always from the time that I started watching Rocky Horror. I thought they were some of the funniest scenes in the movie. Some very fun, clever writing, especially the way that they are almost identical in dialogue and everything.
Yeah, you would think that it's laziness, but it's actually the best option as far as like dialogue options between these two.
Yeah, and it's a really fun, like, it's fun because you watch the Janet sex scene, and that's not so shocking or
Right.
anything. Maybe shocking that Frank would have sex with a woman. But, I mean, at first, because I think most people, especially when the movie came out, would be like, well, he's gay. But then he has sex with a woman, and but then, that's not so shocking. And then the exact same scene repeated with Brad. I think that has a great punch to it.
It does. Absolutely. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about in this minute?
Well, I think we have to address the elephant in the room. This is where Once in a While went, the deleted scene, which is a full song.
That is true. I think that it's going to be really fun for us to dig into that. But let's go ahead and excitedly tease that that's going to be our Christmas present to our listeners.
Yes, exactly. We will release that as a bonus episode. Merry Christmas, because it's not a minute, it's not part of the minute canon of the film, but we still, of course, have to discuss it and rate the song and everything. So that'll be how we handle that. But just so you know, listeners, if they had kept the scene in, this is where Once in a While would be.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay.
On to callbacks. What do you have?
Not a ton, but we have a few. When Riff says Magenta has just released the dogs, I often hear people say her sisters instead of the dogs. Meh. When Frank says coming, that's a softball, obviously. The typical callback is so's Brad, and then not yet, and then there we go, because then his legs really go up in the air, and he seems to be in ecstasy. Then we see Susan Sarandon with, as Leandra pointed out, a very fake tear. It is viscous and it is somewhat opaque, so people will say that's not a tear because it really doesn't look like a tear. And then when she says, "How could I have done this to you?" people will say, well, it would have been easier if you took off the pantyhose, because that's when we'll see the shot pan down and you see she is indeed wearing her pantyhose still. And then the callback to that callback would be, no, Susan Sarandon just has webbed feet.
I do like that one.
It is fun. And then when she starts doing the, oh, if only we hadn't made this journey, but you did. If only the car hadn't broken down. But it did, and that will continue in the next minute as well. Also, whenever someone references the car breaking down, people will argue that it did not, and in fact, they got a flat tire.
Very nice.
Yeah. What do you have?
A couple of really fun ones, actually.
Ooh.
I have some regional ones and some ones that have been retired. For instance, when Magenta has just released The Dogs, a sad callback from yesteryear. Who let the dogs out? Who?
That should come back.
Why?
Because people would still get the reference.
But then it would happen again. Was that a song that you liked? Oh, you do like dogs, so you probably enjoyed this.
Well, I was also like 7 or 8 years old when that song became popular, so I think it was normal for me to really like it. But, I mean, it was never like a favorite song of mine, but do you not have like a fond nostalgia for it at this point?
Well, let me put it to you this way. At our most recent show, I tried to get one of the virgins to sing ooh ah just a little bit, ooh ah a little bit more, and literally 0 people in the audience understood that that was a song reference. And it,
I actually didn't know the song either.
oh my god, really?
Yeah, maybe, I mean, if I heard the tune I might, but just from the lyrics I did not.
Okay. Well, I continue to feel very, very old. So that's fun.
And I will keep my mouth shut in response to that.
That's so
No.
polite.
Yeah.
Such a weird thing for
Yeah.
you to start doing now. So,
But yeah, anyway, I like who let the dogs out. I would laugh. I really, but I would want it to be with the full force of the who let the dogs out.
yeah. Yeah, I know. That sounds like a thing you would like.
You know what, Leandra? Just for you, I'm bringing it back.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I will definitely remind you, so it will definitely happen, and you won't definitely forget about this in 20 minutes. Yeah. I'll let you know how
What
that
else?
goes, listeners. You already did the callback for not, so's Brad, not yet, now he is. I I'm trying to remember if we hear a gulp from Frank when he goes back in for the kiss on the crotch, as I am kind of suggesting that it is, because, I mean, Brad's still wearing underwear, so it's not necessarily that he's filleting Brad, at least not to his best abilities. So,
Well, I'm sure there's a hole in those
oh,
underwear.
I guess there is a dick hole. Okay,
Yeah.
then,
She wears underwear with dick holes in them. That's me, listeners, who does that.
yes.
But
She
but I
being
think you do
us.
hear a gulp.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear Frank do kind of I do like his cartoony look. And then I think you do hear a little gulp when he goes back in.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily a callback so much as a thing that happens that I think is callback worthy. And then for the series of kind of spliced mini scenes that we have for what's happening here? Where's Brad? Where's anybody? Sometimes you'll get people that go, what's happening here? Switch. Where's Brad? Switch. Where's anybody? Switch. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
I like the two different callbacks that you can do at this next bit when you see Rocky running in the rain. You can continue the I still can't find the bathroom, or you can set up I paid good money to see this movie and I'm not going anywhere until I see a one-eared dog. And I do like that quite a lot.
That's very good. I like that.
For the it would have been easier without the pantyhose, one of the additional things that you can add to that is are they crotchless? Drip, drip. Yeah, they're crotchless. Yeah, very good. In addition to adding but you did to the end of the next series of statements, you can also change some words. So Janet is now saying, "Oh, if only we hadn't made this movie. If only the plot hadn't broken down. If only we were amongst actors." Things like that.
Yeah.
And then a very fun regional callback, one that is so well known that it actually found its way onto Wikipedia. In Judaism, there is a concept referred to as dayenu. It's actually a part of a song that you sing in Passover. The word dayenu means essentially it would have been enough or something along those lines. And the song itself is like, it starts with, if he had brought us out of Egypt, if he had executed justice upon the Egyptians, if he had executed justice upon their gods, etc., etc. And then the kind of end of that is, that would have been enough, dayenu. So in Israel and in other areas that have kind of a higher population of Jewish audience, after all of these if only statements that Susan Sarandon, Janet, says, people will say dayenu. And I think that is hilarious.
I don't get it.
The song is a series of if only this thing had
I
happened.
see.
And the response is, that would have been enough. Dianu.
I see.
So if only we hadn't made this journey, that would have been enough. If only the car hadn't broken down, that would have been enough.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, so I do get it. Yeah, good one.
Well, I thought that was great, personally, as somebody who celebrates like Passover and the like. But those were really all of my callbacks. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
No?
All right. So, I guess that means that we are done for the minute. And now you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, so get the fuck out.
To the late night
Okay.
double feature picture show.